all forms of rail seats or seats incorporating barriers, as they're now being called, are much safer to stand behind because you've got a rail in front of you. That's number one. Then the next thing that comes into mind is whether it's got a lock and how deep it is, how much space it takes up on the row. The metal seats, as you can see behind me, and are in place here at Shrewsbury and at Celtic, and fans are quite familiar with, they've got a lock. At the moment, they're allowed in Scotland, they're allowed at a club like Shrewsbury, which is not governed by the all-seater policy, but they're not allowed in stadia that are governed by that policy. Seats without a lock, like the one in front of me and the one next to it, they're allowed now in grounds in this country that are governed by the all-seater policy. Some people might have seen the pictures just last weekend of the new Tottenham ground. I mean, they've got seats where you've got a plastic back and a plastic front and a rail on a cranked upright. This is a much slimmer version. You've got the plastic seat, goes up and down, you've got the metal back, you've got a very upright stanchion, which means it's only 100 mil deep. That's why it's called the Rail Seat 100. And that's critical, because if you've got quite narrow rows and the seat takes up too much space, the safety advisory group might say to the club, okay, yeah, you can put these rail seats in, but if fans stand there persistently or officially in the future when it's allowed, there isn't enough space to have 28 fans standing on a 28-seat row. We're going to say only 25 or only 24. So you have to have lots of space. And if also you hope in the future the rules will change and you can increase capacity, you've got to have 700 mil in front of that seat. So on a row that say is 800 mil deep, which a lot of the new ones are, then a seat that's only 100 mil deep gives you that 700. Anything that's fatter, like this version here or what they've got at Spurs, you can't do it. You have no hope whatsoever. New regulations came out last November. They call it the Green Guide. And it says, if, dear football club, you have an area in your stadium where fans are standing persistently, you must either make them sit down, and everyone knows that can't be done, or you must consider installing seats incorporating barriers. And so what Tottenham have done is put seats incorporating barriers in an area where they think fans might stand to make them safer. And because the safety authority, they are a safety authority, they're not an anti-standing authority, they're taking the view now that if fans are standing, the best thing to do is to ensure that they are safe. And so their recommendations are now that clubs consider putting in seats like this. So this sort of seat, because it is a seat, it's not locked out of place, it can go up and down quite normally like any other seat. Because it is a seat and the rail makes it even safer, that's perfectly okay now for any Premier League club, any Championship club governed by the all-seater policy. They can put them in, and indeed they're now being recommended to do that to make those areas of their grounds where fans stand safer. I think it'd be the first step in changing practice in stadia, what actually happens. We'll have areas, there'll be called singing sections, things like that, where everybody knows with a nudge and a wink, you can go there and you can stand and the stewards will let you. I would like to see then football clubs and their safety advisory groups changing the ground regulations to say that persistent standing is not allowed in all areas of the ground except section X, because it's not the law that says you can't stand, it's only the ground regs. And if the reality is that the ground is being operated with that area being used as a standing area, and the stewards are happy with it, and the SAG are happy with it, then why not change the ground regulations to reflect reality? What happens then in terms of the law, that's down to the Minister and Department of Culture, Media and Sport. I think it's going to take another year yet, probably, until they change the law. But at that time, it might then be possible not only to have one fan standing behind in the space between rail seats, but to have more than one. And I know that Everton, for example, are hoping that might be done in time for them to incorporate that into their new stadium. There are clubs that I know are looking at it quite closely, for this summer, and I think next summer as well. But the sooner they do it, the better, because what price do you put on safety? As long as we have fans standing behind seats that come up to their shin height, there's always that danger, slight and remote as it might be, there's always that danger that someone will fall over and not just graze their knee, but do themselves serious injury. So the sooner we take the precautions to make those areas where fans stand safer, the better.